So that's the end of the intro. Let's get started. From here out, there are no big slides or anything that, that shouldn't be surprising. All I plan to do is I'm going to, for each section, show you some of the cool, or at least the high yield widgets and terms that you should keep in mind. And then we're just going to live code and go through some of the websites. So let's go ahead and get started. If you look on flutter.dev, and we're going to go over to docs, and we're just going to click get started. And I already have Flutter installed. It's not worth doing this part right now. But it says test drive, terminal, and it tells you how to create an app in real time. And so I'm going to open up terminal. Let me make this just a little bit larger so hopefully everyone can see. It says Flutter create, and it would just say Atrium Health Demo or AI Health Demo, but I'm also going to include this organization so that I don't have to make any other changes down the road. And so there, now it's going to run in the background. It's all done. Now I want to go into this application, AI Health Demo. Let's open a simulator. So this is a iPhone simulator. And then I'm going to just type in Flutter run. And let's see if it works. While this is happening, I mentioned the code's compiling. This is the first time this has ever run on an application that I've created just now. We'll see if that runs. And then if it does, then I'm going to show you as the next part how to get this set up for Android and iOS at the same time. It's a really cool setup, and it's not too many extra lines of code. So while this is happening in the background, I'm actually just going to make this a little bit smaller, this a little bit smaller, and there it is. Here's my Hello World app. It's there. Okay, so we just made an app. Good job, us. Cool. Now I'm going to go ahead and move this into here. Let's put everything together in a single workspace so that you can have this in real time. And I'm going to open up Visual Studio Code, because that's usually where I do my development. It's not in Terminal. So in VS Code, and I have all the links for this in my GitHub, by the way, there is a way that you can debug multiple devices. And so what it tells you that you need to do is you have to go to debug and open configurations. So over here, debug, open configurations. This whole thing is recorded, so you don't really have to take notes if you don't want, but you're welcome to do that, by the way. And then you need to add a configuration for each of your Android device and for your iPhone. So I'm going to debug, open configurations. This is for Dart and Flutter. I'm going to just paste this stuff down, and it needs a specific device ID for Android and iPhone. So what I can do in VS Code is there's this thing called a command palette. I'm going to explain, at least for this section, some of the shortcuts that I'm using, but Windows or Shift Command P lets me just type in whatever I want. So if I wanted to launch an emulator, there it is. There it is. Be able to have both devices open. I want to know what the ID is in Terminal. I'll just type this in, and it'll actually tell me, here's this emulator. That's my Android. And here is my iPhone. Oops. There we go. Hit save, and I should be able to, when I click debug for all devices, hit play, and it should run on both the Android phone and the iPhone. Okay, while all that's running, I'm just going to tell you, no matter what development environment you're working in, it's helpful to learn some of the keyboard shortcuts. And I've highlighted here's for Mac. These are the ones that I use almost exclusively here. I trigger a suggestion, I format a document, I quick fix, and I can get rid of the bar on the left side and on the right side. It doesn't actually have the code, but that's what it is. Here's the same for Windows, and you're welcome to look this up after. Now let's head back over. Okay, so my iPhone is done. That's pretty cool. This and here on the left side, I want to get rid of this. on the right side. I want to get rid of that. Actually, let me get back over to my app. And let's see if this one runs as well. Yes, it does. Okay, so now we have officially made an app for Android and iPhone. And if I make changes to this app, again, I'm trying to give you the high points to make the most of your time. If I change the color of this app from blue to like red and hit save, it'll update on both in real time. That's pretty cool. I could make this orange if I wanted to, or any of the various colors that I like. I'm a fan of green, so let's just make it green. Cool. And if you are wondering, now that we have our app running, what is the bare minimum that you need for an app? And the answer is, as far as I know, MaterialApp. So if I got rid of all of this text, all that code, I got rid of my title and my theme, and I just made this, we'll just make a little text widget that says bare bones, and I hit save, there it is. This is the bare minimum thing that I need for an app to run. It's kind of, doesn't look that great. We can actually put this is a quick fix where I can wrap this in a center widget. I didn't like where it was up here, so I added a new widget that said center, and that's how I'm able to put this in a different location. Okay, so if this is the bare minimum, then the question is, well, how do you make it look like an app? And for that, I would suggest when we're going to Flutter, I'm going to show you some of this catalog, because really a lot of your time on flutter.dev is going to be spent understanding what some of the basic things are that you need to know and what all these various components are for an app itself. And Scaffold is essentially the thing that makes an app look like a various screen. So, and it, when you click on this, it'll actually give you an example. So you have a scaffold with the title, with an AppBar, it has some more stuff. You've got a body, and then you've got a floating action button. Okay, so let's make this. So I'm going to change this from center to scaffold. And it doesn't like the term child. It actually wants this to be the body. And if I hit save, great. There it is. It says bare bones. It's at the very top. It still doesn't look great. Let me just wrap this. I'm hitting quick fix again and wrap this with another widget called center. There it is. Can you all even see that? No, not really. All right, so how do we make the text bigger? I'll show you the next thing that is really helpful for you. If you are up here in API docs, you can actually just click and look for the various info that is on a text widget. And so there is something in here called TextStyle that you can find. Let me see, maybe from Widgets. There it is. And it tells you how you can make it bold or things along those lines. So if I want to make this a little bit larger so that you can see it, within this text widget, I'm going to call this parameter called style, and it's going to take text style, and I'm going to do size, font size. If I start typing in a few of each letters, it'll automatically fill this in for me, which is really good. And I can make this extremely large. And there it is, 64. We can make this a little bit smaller, 38, there you go. And you can see, there it is. All right, that's cool. One final really basic thing is if you see this comma, 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 if you actually hit commas in between those, it'll save it and it'll format it in a way that you can actually see what each section is. So if I got rid of this comma, it's going to make this a little bit smaller and it'll automatically reformat that on your own. So as in a good example, if I just didn't want there to be, if I wanted text to be all one widget, if I get rid of that comma, it'll do that. Okay? All right. Next part, and then I'm going to, so we're up to, we've done MaterialApp, we've sort of done Scaffold, but we haven't fully implemented that. And while we've done this, we've also gone over a little bit of text and TextStyle. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make an AppBar, and I'm going to call this AppBar, and I'm going to set a title for this as a text widget. And I'm going to call this AI Health. And there it is. Now you have one that looks like an Android style widget and an iOS style widget in real time as we've updated this. I like my green theme, so I'm going to put it back. And actually, while I'm at this, just so I never have to do this TextStyle again, at least for this course, I'm going to call a text theme that has body 1 as the text style of this. So every time that you have this text widget, if it's at least for the things that we're creating, it's going to default to, for the majority of the stuff I'm writing, they're going to default to this body 1 notation like header, body, outline, stuff like that. And so what that means here is that if I made another widget or if I had additional ones, all of them are going to be the same font size. Okay? All right. Now, heading back over, so we have this top bar, we've got an AppBar, and what's next? We've gone over text and TextStyle. We're going to move this text around a little bit, and then we're going to end with a floating action button. And that should be the end of at least the very, very basics. Things are going to ramp up as we go. Just bear with me. Okay, so I mentioned that this is a center widget. If you look, there's some, as you go through some of the docs, there are some additional ways that you can move the your text around. So center is default, it just puts everything in the center. Align is a nice thing because it allows you to set an alignment. I'll just do, let's say I want this in the center on the right side, I can put it there. Or if I want it on the top right, I can just make those changes and it'll update this in real time. As you're trying to figure out on your own what various layouts you want to do, you can click on this little button here in Visual Studio Code, select which of the apps you want, and here, I'm going to move this into the same screen, move this back over. And I'm going to make this just a little bit larger so you all can see this. Each of the things that we've made, I can select this widget and I can either click here or I can click on the text that's here and it'll tell me what it is, and it will also in Visual Studio Code jump to the relevant code and file. That's really helpful. So I'm just going to keep this open for now, but I'm going to deselect this select widget. The other thing I think is really useful as you're trying to figure out where these things can be positioned is you can also wrap the text in something called a container. And container, as you go through the documents here, it's a really nice, I'll just say it's a convenience widget that combines a lot of the stuff that you have here from Align, and it has the ability to make colors and do a lot of really cool stuff. If you're able to work through a container and figure out how that looks, I think it's going to be really helpful. So if I decided instead of this being an align widget that I switch it to container and I do alignment top right, it actually still keeps what I need. Let's move this back down over to the bottom right. So there it is. It's still there. I made no additional changes. What I can do here, and I couldn't do in alignment, is actually set, let's make this blue. And what that will do is if you were to look over here on this DevTools and I refresh my tree, it tells me, well, there's the text widget, and this is where the container is. It's taking up all the space here. Sometimes a container will take up all the available space. Sometimes it won't. And the reason why it does that, and if this is described here in these widgets parts, is it's trying to make your job as easy as possible. So as you're trying to lay out your stuff, I would suggest, at least right now, get a container, have a color, and then you'll know if it's taking up the full screen or if it's only taking up part of it. And I'll explain kind of that, but again, I don't want to go way too deep in the woods, okay? So if I wanted this part with this nice pretty blue color to be in the center, I could, once again, wrap this with a new widget called center. And so you should see them both update in real time. So that is MaterialApp, Scaffold, AppBar. Various things you can do with text, various things you can do to position these widgets around. And I'm going to end, at least on the beginner parts, with talking about a floating action button, and we're also going to set up a quick route so you can have multiple pages. And then we're going to move on to those next parts. So let's go ahead and create a floating action button. And if you looked under the scaffold, so this is all under scaffold class, scaffold. And I could search for it like this, or what I could do is I could go back over to like flutter.dev, docs, widgets catalog, and then we could just do, this is probably going to be under basics as well. Here's your scaffold, and it shows you this is what a floating action button looks like. It takes, again, there's a recurring theme. You have a named, it has a named parameter that calls the class or the object that is essentially the same. So floating action button takes floating action button. AppBar takes AppBar. This is how you're able to build these parts. So I want, within scaffold, something called floating action button, and it's going to take a floating action button. If you see these little squiggly lines in VS Code, it tells you that you need this argument called onPressed. And so if I just do that, there it is. You have a floating action button. And if I want there to be, so like some text in there that just says text, you can see that. Or if I wanted this to maybe look like a nice little icon, I can make it add plus. Let's do that one. Okay, so there is a button. Now you have a floating action button, and it'll make whatever various changes you have as you adjust the layout of your app. This here, again, these are things that are worth going through in a little bit more depth on your time, is called a anonymous function. And one of the things that is helpful with Dart, but other languages have this now, is, you know, instead of me calling another class or another method that's within here, what I can do is I can just have this, and I'm only going to use it here. I don't need to have a whole name for all of this. It's just going to be used in this one instance now. So I could extract this out, but this is what it takes as an input, and this is what it returns. And what I would like for this to do is, why don't I have it so when I do this, when I click the button, it makes a new page. So let's work our way towards that in this one specific part. And I'm going to show you one final part within the main widget, or the getting started part of flutter.docs. And there's something here called their cookbook. So if you go back to their main page, you go to their cookbook. This is really the very, very basics that tells you all the various things that you can do. And I'm just going to skip down to where it says navigation, navigate to a new screen, and back. Okay. So I have to do these things. I have to make two routes, and then I have to do something called navigator.push, and then when it goes away, I call something called navigator.pop. First one is just a scaffold. So called the second one also is a scaffold. And then when I have onPressed, I call navigator.push material page route, and it will create this new route. So what I'm actually going to do here is I'm going to take all of this stuff that's here from scaffold down, and you know, this is all, if you look at my Dart page, this is getting a little bit difficult to manage in just main.dart, and I really want to be able to call additional things. So I'm going to just take all of this scaffold from here down, cut it out, and I'm going to use a snippet to make a new, something called a StatelessWidget. And I'm going to call this one home screen. And I'm going to make another one called new screen. And in the first one, the home screen, I'm just going to make this same thing that we already had. And in this new one, I'm going to have it say new screen. And it's still going to, well, we'll change this color to new screen. We'll change this color to maybe like gray. And we're going to just get rid of the floating action button for now. Okay. Last thing, I have to have this implement home screen. Okay, so I have, the app is still running. I have this new screen, so this is out. And on this one specifically, I want this to open this one. So I want, let me show you. So on pressed in my home screen, this is my home screen, I'm going to call navigator.push. It's going to make a new page route of something called new screen. Okay, so if I push this button, here's my new screen. All right, that's pretty cool. If I re-implemented my floating action button here, so I'm going to uncomment this and then do the same lines of code. In the new screen, I can make a new screen and a new screen and a new screen and a new screen. So every time I'm doing this, it's pushing. Every time I do this, it pops back to where I was. That is what Navigator does. That's how you're able to make various screens within Flutter. Okay? Final part, and I'm going to show this for 101, 102, and 103. At some point through each of these, I'm going to create a folder just to make this easier for you to manage stuff. And I really love the term screens, services, and shared that comes from Fireship. I think it's the fastest way that you're able to make it without it being a headache. So I'm going to make a new folder in my lib directory, and I'm going to call this one screens. And what I want to do, and this is what will make your life easier, in screens, I'm going to make something called screens.dart. I might as well, while we're at this, just call something called services. And it's going to have services.dart, and I'm going to have one that's called shared, and it's going to have shared.dart. In here, I'm going to make a new file called home, and a file that is called new. And in the home one, I'm going to put all of the various things that are related to this home screen. So I'm just going to cut this out and put this into here. And a material design, it's going to tell me that it doesn't know how to interpret widget or any of those things. I have to import. Here's the Flutter material package. That's going to be at the start of pretty much all of your widgets. And I'm going to do this same thing with new right here. IMPM, hit enter. There it is. There's new screen and there's home screen. Now, if you look at it, home doesn't know how to deal with this file, and main doesn't know how to deal with home screen. They don't know how to talk to each other. And there's easy ways that you can do this where you can just hit here and do quick fix, and it'll say, hey, do you want to just import this library for each individual file? And that's fine, but if you have a separate Dart class that only calls export and the name of each of the files that are here, export home and export new, what that means is I only have to do this once. I import the library with my full package name and screens.dart, and that's it. I'm never going through that error message again. And that way I'm only having to update, if I delete a Dart file, I only have to update it here. Same thing on this part. It is, I could do this from new.dart, but I think it's better just to use this in that similar package. Okay? With me so far? Cool. That's 101. Are there any questions for those that are on the line? Is the speed, pace okay? There's a lot of stuff that I'm trying to cover, and I want this to ramp up faster and faster and faster. So I just wanted to start with the very basics and work from there.